Hi, my name is Adam Uzialko. I'm an editor with business.com, and today I'm joined by Dan Berman, founder and CEO of Concentra Solutions, PharmaCentra, and Cannabis PPO, all of which are contact centers. Today we'll be talking about how small business owners can choose the right contact center to partner with them, as well as how contact centers have evolved and changed through the COVID-19 pandemic and what changes are likely to stay for the long haul. I'm here today with Dan Berman, who's founder and CEO of a family of contact center companies. We're talking about the COVID-19 pandemic and how contact centers adapted to it and what changes are here to stay, as well as what small business owners need to know about contact centers when choosing one as a partner. So nice to have you on, Dan. Thanks for joining me.
Great to be here.
So what can you tell me about the COVID-19 pandemic and how it impacted contact centers and the way they work with their clients?
Yeah, it turned the world upside down, obviously. One of the things that we've been seeing in our industry for many years is definitely a move for domestic contact centers to work from home. I predicted that it was a 10-year trend that we would see more and more contact centers move toward that model. And ourselves, we have two premise-based offices in South Georgia and New Brunswick, Canada. And we were 80-20, 80% premise-based, 20% home-based. Most of our home-based workers were in Canada. We were experimenting with that model in Canada when the pandemic hit. So we had all our processes in place, most of our technology in place. So to send everybody home was logistical headache and nightmare, mainly because of individual bandwidth for each employee. But we were able to be creative and get through a lot of those issues and issued a lot of Verizon jetpacks to employees. People were able to work from home. It was not easy at first, but we figured it out. And so this 10-year trend that we saw happening got compressed literally into 6 weeks. And everybody in our business is rethinking, what is the need of an office? The biggest reason that we didn't go home-based prior to this was our clients wouldn't allow us, or many of our clients wouldn't allow us because of PCI compliance. We work with a lot of banks, financial institutions, so privacy and HIPAA and pharma in our pharma world was a big issue. So we were always concerned about privacy and security. But COVID hit and we all kind of figured it out. And now we're looking at our client base and we're not sure if our clients are going to require us to go back to the office or not. All we know is if we do go back, it wouldn't be until probably next year. One of our clients gave us guidance that they're not going back to their office until summer of 2022. Okay, that means I don't have to really make a decision because if you're not going back, you can't force me to go back.
So with those security concerns, what was the experience of kind of like ensuring the infrastructure was ready to go, that, all this data was going to be secure when you had this kind of mass migration to remote work?
Well, the biggest issue is we have a lot of security within our VPN. We have also a lot of cloud-based technology. The biggest issue we had in terms of security was melding all our different types of security infrastructure and apparatuses that we had. We had to put it onto one common platform because we have different clients on different platforms. It got very complicated. So each home-based worker had a different setup. We put cameras like we have on every desktop, and for our more secure clients, we actually set up we sent them a wireless webcam that we set up that goes behind, so we have a view of the desk. So that way we have a program where we can actually see our employees face to face, and we can actually look on their desk to see if they're writing anything down, because that's the biggest issue is writing down a credit card number or social security number. And we have all kinds of other security protocols in place to manage that as well.
What would you say, if anything, has changed about, the client experience and how you guys have had to work with them?
Well, it's interesting. Zoom has been a real godsend. I spent, and our client services team spent a lot of time on airplanes going to client sites and visiting and collaborating. And the purpose of our visits were both sales and collaboration and trying, build solutions for our clients. But we're finding we can do it incredibly efficiently on Zoom. It's from an internal perspective, I find collaboration on Zoom is actually quite efficient. And so the clients haven't really missed too much of a beat, I don't think. I think they do miss coming and seeing and touching and feeling, meeting our employees. We used to have a lot of site visits, people who would come down to our South Georgia office and spend a couple days and do training, and now they do it on Zoom, so they don't have that same connection. And we do miss that, but from an operational perspective, it's pretty effective. It's working. So we kind of all held our breath when we kicked this off, and we had to reorganize and rethink a lot of our training. We've rejiggered our LMS, our learning management system, so there's a lot more self-training than there used to be, which we're moving toward anyway, and that's been a trend in the industry. A 10-year trend, again, turned into a 6-week opportunity. So everything in every aspect of our business delivery we've had to revisit.
When it comes to kind of working with your employees to make sure they were ready for a big change, what did that look like? You just mentioned, changing the learning management system to be a little bit more self-guided. What were some other tweaks you had to make to that process to make sure they were ready to handle these calls?
The biggest issue was not necessarily doing their job. The biggest issue is the psychological health of our employees. They really, really, really miss the human contact of being with each other. And that's been a big issue. And so we've done a lot within our HR group has done spent a lot of effort and time trying to figure out how to stay connected. And we've implemented a new employee engagement platform called Mojo, which is kind of like internal social media, but also how learning management system is tied into it. We're trying to learn how to create that connection with our common employees in a different format. Now, keep in mind, we have many, many different types of things we do. We do quality assurance monitoring, which is listening. And those types of employees are kind of used to the being, in their own little zone, not talking to anybody. So that wasn't a big stretch for them. The people that are talking to customers and patients, they're more social. They really miss the water cooler moments and the break room. And I miss it too. That was my time as a CEO. That was my time to walk the floor. I always say, if you want to learn about what's going on at your company, go to the smoking area and hang out with the smokers. You'll find out exactly what's going on in your company. I don't smoke, but I used to hang out with the smokers outside and chat with them. I miss that. And they miss it too. And I'm not sure we'll be able to figure out how to replace that virtually, but we're trying our hardest. There's lots of platforms to try it with. We're doing social distancing get-togethers outside. I did a little picnic for the managers back in the fall where we got together. It was weird at first. The first get together we had outside, the managers were all sitting there and we're kind of broken our sandwiches and we ordered little lunches for everybody. And no one was talking. I was like, this is weird. Why aren't we talking? Do we forget how to communicate? And everybody kind of chuckled and said, yeah, it's weird. It's like you haven't gone, swimming in a year. I haven't ridden a bike in a couple of years. It takes you a second. You have to hesitate. It doesn't come naturally. And it was an odd experience because interacting with our employees face to face for the first time in 8 months or whatever it was at that point, it didn't come naturally. It took a second. It was very disconcerting and a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, you're waiting turns like on Zoom, right? You're waiting for the host to start the meeting. So what do you think the single biggest change that's here to stay is that the industry's kind of experienced through the pandemic?
Well, if you look at our business in whole, I think there'll always be a place for premise-based call centers, and I think that the trend toward home-based will continue, and I think it will be the majority of domestic capacity in the U.S. It is now, obviously, but when this all shakes out, I think it'll still be the majority. But when you look at our business, it's not complicated. It's sticks, bricks, people, and computers. It's technology with people in a facility. And when you hire someone like us, you take the facility and you build it into the price. If our facilities are fluid and our need for facilities are less defined, my pricing is going to have to change. The way I engage with the customers, if it's sticks, bricks, people, and computers, and there's no more sticks and bricks, it's just people and computers, we have to bring a lot more value to the table. We have to figure out what we can do why can't the client just do it themselves? That's what it is. And that's the first impression. And that is a common misunderstanding is if it's home-based workers, why can't I just do it? That's a lot more complicated than that. And we've learned firsthand how complicated that can be.
I think that that leads into our next segment nicely on what to look for in a contact center partner. So imagine I'm a small business owner, never worked with a contact center before in any way, shape, or form. Let's say I have a small retail store. And I'm starting to get a lot of calls, and I know I need help. But I'm looking around, and there's a lot out there. What are some of the main things I should be looking for off the top to start differentiating some of these contact centers from one another?
Excellent question. And it really comes down to finding a partner that can understand your needs and what you're looking for. And it's not there are as many choices in call center partners as there are flavors of water at the grocery store now, and sizes and shapes and packaging. And now with the barrier of entry to get into our business has gotten even lower because we don't even need to rent the facility anymore. However, you're absolutely correct. There's lots of business that all of a sudden waking up and saying, geez, my business has changed and I need help. How do I find a partner that can help me? And the best way to explain that is to really partner with someone who's a problem solver, and can help you solve your problem, even if you don't know what that problem is. Because I'm an unsophisticated business, all of a sudden my call volume has gone up. I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know. They don't even know what questions to ask. So if I'm in that position of a business owner that's having to look for an outsourced partner for the first time, I would find someone who could help me understand exactly what I need. And you do that through interviewing contact centers, and that process itself is an iterative learning process. There are people that are brokers out there that do that for a living. That's actually how I started my business. That can help you evaluate what your needs are. But the most important thing is to find someone who's not just a body shop, who's just not just answering the phone. That's the problem when it's a smaller volume type program. It tends to be more commodity driven, and you have to be willing to pay more for the right partner, and to make sure that your partner is a problem solver, not just answering the phones.
Yeah, I used to review call centers, answering services, and in a lot of my research, I found there are things that the average consumer just simply wouldn't know. Things like estimating increments, like second increments, and rounding up time on call, certain fees that some companies charge, others don't. What are some of those hidden things or those gotchas that small businesses should be on the lookout for when choosing a contact center?
I mean, the biggest is counterintuitive. Is so many have minimums, and we have minimums because it's not worth it for us to work with clients that don't have any call volume or small call. And every company is different and requires different minimums. But don't be scared away by the wrong minimum. For example, one of the things that we do is we had a client that says, well, that's way too high for me. I'm not going to be able to fill. I don't have that many calls. And so we sat with them and said, what other functions do you have going on in your evolving COVID-19 business? And we went through and we found out that there was a lot of functions that were back office functions that our people could be doing in between phone calls, that took a huge load off of his internal staff and actually made his engagement with us a lot more cost effective because we were able to fill the idle time. And so, at first he got scared by the $5,000 minimum, and then we kind of walked him through all the different other things we could do for them. They said it was a bargain. So don't be scared away. It's counterintuitive to be scared away by certain things, but understand what they mean and what those opportunities are. And I would encourage everybody not just to look at someone to answer my call, but someone to help me with solving my overall business problem. There's lots of functions and activities within every business that can be done remotely now. And that's the gift of the internet. That's the gift of COVID, that we realize we can do work from anywhere. It's collaboration that's going to take face to face. And so a lot of what we do in our business is looks and walks and talks like contact center, but a lot of it just back office work that traditionally in large volumes goes offshore to places like India or the Philippines. But people are looking at a more integrated environment to try and maximize their U.S. workforce opportunities now, because I'm a small business. I want my calls answered here domestically.
Those increments is one thing I did want to talk about, though, because I know, in my conversations with small business owners, it's something that's usually misunderstood, something that's usually not recognized until, the ink is dry on the contract. So could you kind of describe, how that works, what it means, and what small business owners should look for when it comes to rounding and second increments?
In terms of billing with time, and there's multiple ways to bill in contact centers, and we have basically three different ways that we bill. We can bill per minute, we can bill per dedicated full-time equivalent (FTE), and then we have a hybrid model where we can, and that's a very, very common model for us, especially for a small business. It gives a lot of flexibility. So let's say we have X number of calls per month that are so long, we'll handle the bulk of it with our shared group. But the overflow will, with our dedicated group, like 2 or 3 dedicated, and the overflow we'll put into our own shared group on a per minute basis. If you like, we bill on a per minute basis, and I think it's in 6-second increments. The difference of billing in 6-second increments and not can be huge if you're doing lots and lots of calls. But for most small business, the amount of calls they're doing is not that big. So it's not going to be a huge difference in their bill at the end of the month. But if you can find someone like us that can have a creative solution, even if we weren't billing 6-second increments, we showed a client how in the hybrid environment, we could save them $100,000 a year, even though our per minute rate was higher than everybody else's, because we saved them so much on how we structured it. So there are all kinds of creative ways to structure engagements. And I get dissuaded when I see some of our competitors that go after small businesses that just have 6 packages, and that's just the way it is. And either fit into one of those 6 packages, or you're probably not a client for us. If that's the case, it's going to be hard to get really good service, because you're not going to get anything other than more commodity type work, in my opinion. And if that's what you want, that's okay. But that's not what everybody's looking for.
Those other back office services that you mentioned beyond just answering the phones, what does that look like? I think a lot of small business owners might not be aware of what else a contact center can do.
Well, I mean, the typical ones that we're aware of are things like chat, email responses. Email responses don't need instant response, for example. And people don't think to put their email, even an unsophisticated user wouldn't think to put their email into their call center stream. The emails, you can have a different SLA. You can say it's, we want to return all emails within, an hour or 2 or whatever that SLA might be. Whereas a call you want answered quickly. Well, having that type of balanced work can really even out your workflow and your need for those peaks. It's just like, right now in Texas, they're experiencing, the lack of peak energy. And we try and do the same thing within our contact center environment, try and staff for what the peak is, but that means you're also going to have some idle time. How do you fill that idle time? So some of the other functions we can do is, outbound customer satisfaction surveys, things like that you can do in between. Especially for a business that's changed their model, how are we doing? That you don't know. If you might have a mechanism in place for customer feedback, but it might not be getting any traction. Easy way to do it is to call your customers and talk to them. They don't mind. They don't. People are very open to, especially for most small businesses. Even if I buy something from Amazon, I understand it's a small business seller. If they call me, I talk to them. Or if they sent me an email, a personalized email. You can systematize that, or you can put that into a workflow to really make it personal and get a better response rate. So there's all kinds of ways you can think to deploy people's idle time. And that's really the most efficient way that a business can look at engaging with the contact centers, not just to answer the calls.
I think my final question here is just when you're a small business owner, you've now been partnering with a contact center for some period of time. How do you evaluate them? How do you know they're doing a good job?
Well, there's the typical SLAs that most people have in place, and that's how quickly did you answer the phone, how long were the calls compared to how long they should be, reporting, agent quality scores, things like that. Those are the typical ways you evaluate. The ultimate way to evaluate it is ask your customers. What do your customers think? And that's not so easy to do. But depending on the type of business you have, but the customer feedback will really ultimately guide you on how good that customer service experience is. And there are many gradations, I like to say, in customer service. But there's also the binary, the yes and the no. They either got it right or they didn't. And most customers, when you talk to them, know how to evaluate that experience on a binary basis. Was it a good experience or a bad experience? It was a pretty good experience. Thanks, I appreciate it. That is the ultimate way to measure how good your contact center partner is. And really, the biggest complaint I hear from customers that are unhappy with their current partner is just responsiveness in the client services. And I encourage all of my clients, and I call clients personally on a regular basis and say, if you're not happy with anything, you got to call me. I don't want to find out a year from now or 6 months from now that you weren't happy and fired us. And that's another way to evaluate how proactive is your partner to see if we're doing a good job. One of the things we do for many of our clients, depending on what we're doing for them, is we do quarterly business reviews. We sit down with them and said, here's what we did for you this month, and here's we made the mark. Here's what we missed the mark. Here's what we learned. Here's some opportunities. And we do that because it's an opportunity for us to grow our partnership with them. That's why we do that. And the clients like that. And so if you have that type of collaborative engagement with a vendor, a partner, it's much healthier. It's just like a married couple. If you're communicating well, if you're taking out the trash and you're returning the call and answering your spouse, it's a better relationship. It's the same thing in any business relationship, and more so in contact centers because there's so many points of contact. There's so many data points to look at and evaluate.
Great. Well, Dan Berman, thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time out.
Thank you, Adam. It was great talking to you.